Greetings, and thank you to the Fairfax and Loudoun County Libraries for partnering to host this event. As we honor Black History Month, we're excited to pay homage and celebrate a few among many of the historical contributors of the Harlem Renaissance and Black arts movement. I'm Regina Myers, Chair of the Arts Committee for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Lambda Kappa Omega Chapter, and we're sponsoring this program. Our hope with this content is to inspire interest in the powerful and influential voices and artists of the period. We are thrilled to offer highlights of their exceptional contributions and their influence on American culture as we know it today. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is the first intercollegiate, historically African-American Greek lettered sorority. The organization was founded by 9 college students on the campus of Howard University in 1908. Alpha Kappa Alpha is an international organization of over 300,000 members. We have 1,024 chapters in 48 states and in US territories, spanning across 10 regions and 9 countries. Our organizational purpose is to cultivate and encourage high scholastic and ethical standards. We promote unity and friendship while addressing problems, especially those concerning girls and women. We are empowered by a commitment to servant leadership and to act as a beacon of impact on our communities and society at large. We accomplish this by providing service to all mankind under the guidance and direction of our international president, Dr. Glenda Glover. Lambda Kappa Omega was chartered in Fairfax, Virginia in 1976 by Northern Virginia members of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Lambda Kappa Omega, in collaboration with the Educational and Charitable Foundation, known as ECF, supports the Northern Virginia community through a host of educational and charitable vehicles. We accomplish this through the guidance and support of our current president, Sunita Walker-Resper. ECF has generated thousands of dollars annually, supporting college graduate and professional students in our community through our signature annual book signing. We promote enrichment experiences for young girls through our Little Miss AKA program and exemplify excellence by partnering with a host of community service initiatives, including, but not limited to, Relay for Life, Martin Luther King Day of Service, Orphan Foundation of America, and voter registration drives, just to name a few. Some of our more recent initiatives include, but are not limited to, our #CAP program aimed at assisting and mentoring high school students through the college application process. We also provide resources that impact women's health, wellness, fiscal, and economic education. This program is an initiative of our international target number 4, the arts. For more information about Lambda Kappa Omega and our community programs, we invite you to visit us at aka-lko.org. And now our program, beginning with the Harlem Renaissance. Janetta.
Welcome to the Harlem Renaissance, 1918 through 1937. The Harlem Renaissance was also known as the New Negro Movement. The Harlem Renaissance is an African-American cultural, social, and artistic movement that peaked in the 1920s. Centered in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City, the movement spread through the United States and reached as far as Paris. The major cause of the Harlem Renaissance was the Great Migration, a term used for the movement of African Americans in America from the South to the North and Midwest. You see, African Americans were seeking a better life. The Southern states had passed several laws against African Americans, which prevented Black citizens from registering to vote. and mandating racial segregation. Also, labor shortages due to the First World War was seen as an opportunity to seek employment in the North. The movement of African Americans from the rural South to the urban North was instrumental in initiating the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance is named after the Harlem neighborhood in the Manhattan borough of New York City. And New York City was the financial and cultural capital of the United States. Harlem's location made it an ideal place for the development and advancement of creative works by African Americans. The influence can be gauged by the fact it had an impact on the French-speaking Black writers from African and Caribbean colonies who lived in Paris. During the Harlem Renaissance, there was a dramatic rise in levels of literacy among Black citizens and the development of several national organizations dedicated to their cause, like the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. In 1910, the NAACP launched its official magazine, The Crisis. It published the work of many young African-American writers associated with the Harlem Renaissance. The Crisis had over 100,000 readers. The Harlem Renaissance laid the groundwork for all African-American literature and the development of African-American arts, which had an enormous impact on Black consciousness worldwide. African-American music, such as blues, spirituals, and especially jazz, became a worldwide sensation and amplified the Renaissance. A dance form which developed from the Black folks dance, was associated with jazz and became an international craze. The Harlem Renaissance declined after the Wall Street crash of 1929 and the Great Depression. Yet, major accomplishments of the movement include creating a new Black identity, reducing racial bias, changing the way the world viewed people of color, and adding a new dimension to art forms which influenced artists for generations. The Harlem Renaissance had profound and far-reaching consequences and built the foundation of African-American civil rights movement of the 1950s and the 1960s. Sit back and relax as we unpack the literary, musical, theatrical, and visual arts of the Harlem Renaissance. Jennifer?
This is The Negro Speaks of Rivers, one of my earliest poems written in 1920, just after I came out of high school. The way this poem came to be written was that I was going to Mexico to visit my father, who lived in Mexico City, and on the train going across the Mississippi River, just outside St. Louis, I looked out the window and I saw this great muddy river flowing down toward the heart of the South, and I began to think about what this river meant to the Negro people, how, in a sense, our history was linked to this river, how in slavery time, my grandmother told me that to be sold down the Mississippi was one of the worst things that could happen to a Negro slave. And then I remembered that I'd read about Abraham Lincoln going down the Mississippi as a young man. He went on a raft to New Orleans, and he saw human beings bought and sold in the slave market there. And he was so horrified by this that he never forgot it. And many years later, of course, we know that it was Lincoln who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so as the train went on into the gathering dusk, because it had been about sunset when we crossed the river, I took my father's letter out of my pocket and began to write down on the back of his letter this poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
Ida B. Wells, born 1862. Born Ida B. Wells Burnett, she was an American investigative journalist, educator, and early leader of the civil rights movement. She was among the founders of the NAACP and dedicated her life to fighting for equality and justice, especially for women. She also established the first kindergarten for African Americans in her Chicago community. W.E.B. Du Bois, born 1868. Born William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, he was also among the founders of the NAACP in 1909. He was the first African American to earn a doctorate PhD from Harvard in 1895. As one of our famous civil rights activists and authors, he most notably served and wrote notable works such as The Souls of Black Folks and the Black Reconstruction of America. Madam C.J. Walker, born 1867. Born Sarah Breedlove, she was the first in her family born free of slavery. Madam C.J. Walker is known as the first female self-made millionaire in the United States. A common misconception is that Madam C.J. Walker invented the pressing comb, which was actually invented by Elwood Duncan. But Madam C.J. Walker did develop African-American hair products after a scalp ailment caused hair loss to herself. Her daughter, Alelia Walker, was immersed in social and political culture. She's a philanthropist, a scholar, and works for organizations like the National Conference on Lynching. Jessie Redmond Fawcett, born 1882. Jessie's influence within the Harlem Renaissance cannot be overstated, as she was the editor of The Crisis, which was the official magazine of the NAACP. She encouraged Black writers to write honestly and openly about the African American race. She was also a French teacher in Washington, D.C. public schools. Zora Neale Hurston, born 1891. Zora Neale Hurston was an American author, anthropologist, and filmmaker. Interest in Zora became revived in 1975 when Alice Walker published an article about her in Miss Magazine, which was a popular feminist magazine. Zora's most popular novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, was published in 1937. James P. Johnson, born 1894. James P. Johnson was a pianist known for founding the stride piano style, which was very instrumental in the transition of music from ragtime to jazz. He was also known for participating in cutting contests, where competing musicians would surpass or cut each other to create the best improvisation. Ethel Waters, born 1896. Ethel Waters was an American singer and actress. She was the first African American to star on her own television show with the 1950 sitcom Beulah. She was also the first African American woman to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for her 1962 role in Route 66. Notable songs from Ethel Waters include Stormy Weather and Am I Blue? Fletcher Henderson, born 1897. Fletcher Henderson was a great jazz musician who played the piano and also was a composer, arranger, and band leader. Moved originally by science, Fletcher obtained 2 bachelor's degrees, one in chemistry and one in mathematics. Fletcher was also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the first intercollegiate Greek letter fraternity established for African American men in 1906. Langston Hughes, whose voice you heard earlier reading The Negro Speaks of Rivers. Born 1901, Langston Hughes was born James Mercer Langston Hughes. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and columnist. He's best known as leader of the Harlem Renaissance, in addition to his American poetry accomplishments. Earl Father Hines, born 1903. Earl Father Hines was a charismatic and notable American jazz band leader. Coming from a family of pianists, he played in various bands during his career, one of which being the band of Louis Armstrong named the Hot Five. He was well known for his innovative style, and Earl Father Hines' famous songs include Weatherbird and Boogie Woogie on St. Louis Blues. Josephine Baker, born 1906. Josephine Baker was the first Black woman to star in a major motion picture in the 1927 movie Siren of the Tropics. She was an American-born French entertainer, French resistance agent, and civil rights activist. Josephine Baker used her platform to change the world. She refused to perform for segregated audiences, which forced club owners to integrate for her shows. In 1963, she spoke at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Cab Calloway, born 1907. Cab Calloway was an elegant and charismatic jazz band singer and band leader. He was hired to perform at the Cotton Club as one of their only two house bands. He also found a side career in acting. His most notable on-screen work was for his portrayal as a music promoter in the 1980s film, The Blues Brothers. Billie Holiday, born 1915. Billie Holiday, born Eleanor Fagan, was an American jazz and swing singer nicknamed Lady Day. A film about her life was released in 1972, and in 1973, she was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. She's known for her vocal delivery and improvisational skills, and she pioneered a new way of manipulating phrasing and tempo. And now to Crystal, who will discuss the Black Arts Movement.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's continue to explore how Black creatives transform society through their words and work. In the mid-20th century, a new movement began to emerge after several Blacks felt that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 failed to truly untether people of color. In order to raise their voices of concern, artists like Amir Baraka, Audre Lorde, and Gil Scott-Heron began to create, leading to the Black Arts Movement. If you think about Black art, all Black art, whether it's Invisible Man or whether it's James Baldwin or Richard Wright, they all deal with elements of identity and trying to humanize our experience and our struggle in the world where people have been indifferent to who we are and what we are. It's basically just saying that our lives have meaning. Those are the words of Chio Hodari Coker. As mentioned in the previous slide, Black artists were additionally highly motivated by the tragic assassination of Malcolm X. Viewed as deeply seated in corruption itself, Malcolm's death meant the silencing of a powerful and impactful voice that resonated with a large segment of the Black community. Given that these communities stretched across the nation and the world, contributors of the movement were not just in one geographical location. From Los Angeles to Chicago, New York to DC, a plethora of intellectuals, artists, writers, and the like spread the message of Black liberation and hope through artistic and philosophical conversation and content, with goals to move swiftly in the reversal of indignity, felt by several, if not all. Let's take a look at a few contributors of this moving and pivotal time period.
Amiri Baraka, born 1922. Born Everett Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka was considered the father of the Black Arts Movement. He was an American author and playwright. Influenced by Malcolm X, he changed his name to Amiri Baraka in 1968. He published provocative literary works, including The Slave and preface to a 12-volume suicide note. Gwendolyn Brooks, born 1917. Gwendolyn Brooks was a poet, author, and educator who won a Pulitzer Prize for poetry in 1950. She was also the first Black woman to be a poetry consultant to the Library of Congress. She was the U.S. Poet Laureate in 1985 and the Illinois Poet Laureate previously in 1968 all the way to 2000. Dorothy Dandridge, born 1922. Dorothy Dandridge was an American actress, singer, and dancer. She performed as a vocalist at the aforementioned Cotton Club and also at the Apollo Theater. In 1959, Dorothy was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for her performance in Porgy and Bess. She was the first Black woman to be nominated for the Best Actress Academy Award in 1955 for her performance in Carmen Jones. James Baldwin, born 1924. James Baldwin was a civil rights activist, novelist, playwright, and essayist. He was also a film critic, and he moved to Paris to escape racial and civil unrest. Did you know he finished his first book, Go Tell It on the Mountain, in Switzerland? He's also known for Notes of a Native Son and Nobody Knows My Name. Maya Angelou, born 1928. Born Margaret Annie Johnson, Maya Angelou was a dancer, civil rights activist, poet, author, filmmaker, writer, and educator. She was awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom, Tony Award, 3 Grammy Awards, and a Pulitzer Prize nomination. She spoke 6 languages and was the second author to write a poem for a presidential inauguration. In fact, she wrote on the Post of Mourning for President Clinton's inauguration. Lawrence Larry Neal, born 1937. Larry Neal was a poet, playwright, editor, and scholar of African American theater. In 1961, he graduated from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, which is an HBCU. Larry is one of the most influential figures of the Black arts movement, having authored numerous articles and essays on the movement, including Black Fire and the Black American Arts Movement. Ishmael Scott Reed, born 1938. Ishmael Scott Reed is an American poet, essayist, novelist, playwright, songwriter, and lyricist. He's a conscious part of the Afro-American literary tradition that extends back to the first-person slave narrative. And the central purpose of his novel is to define a means of expressing the complexity of the African-American experience in a manner distinct from the dominant literary tradition. He was a National Book Award nominee in both poetry and fiction in 1973. Nina Simone, born 1933. Born Eunice Kathleen Wayman, Nina Simone was a pianist and singer known as the musical voice of the civil rights. An 8-foot sculpture was erected in her hometown of Tyrone, North Carolina, and some of her ashes were welded into the sculpture's bronze heart. She's known for her revolutionary songs, including Feeling Good, whose famous first line is, "Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel." Nikki Giovanni, born 1943. Born Yolanda Cornelia Giovanni, Nikki Giovanni is known for her fresh, contemporary writing style that takes a rebellious stand against white oppression. Her works range from militant fights for civil rights to love and even children's poems. She's currently a distinguished professor at Virginia Tech University, and she's received numerous honors, including 7 NAACP Image Awards and Oprah Winfrey's 25 Living Legends Award.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Janetta. Thank you, Crystal. And a special thank you to the entire Arts Committee of Lambda Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Lambda Kappa Omega Chapter for all your work on creating this program. When sponsoring this event, or related events, we're often asked questions like, why is this movement referred to as the Harlem Renaissance? The Harlem Renaissance was the African-American cultural movement in New York City in the 1920s. It was an intellectual revival of African-American art and literature centered in Harlem, Manhattan, in New York City, spanning the 1920s. At the time, it was known as the New Negro Movement. Named after the New Negro, a 1925 anthology edited by Alan Locke. The movement also included the new African-American cultural expressions across urban areas in the Northeast and Midwestern United States, mostly affected by the Great Migration, of which Harlem was the largest. We are also asked how the Harlem Renaissance influenced American culture today. The Renaissance was an explosive time. The artists exercised their voices through creativity, self-expression, self-awareness, and Black pride. These powerful voices through words and musical expression were the catalyst for civil rights in America. The period was an inflection point that shifted how society viewed and experienced African Americans. Much of the music, art, and pride we exhibit in pop culture today can be traced back to the roots of the Harlem Renaissance. Another question that we're often asked when participating in related events like today is about Alpha Kappa Alpha in general, and is the current Vice President of the United States a member of our illustrious sorority? The answer is yes. Kamala Harris is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. We are the first intercollegiate, historically African-American Greek-lettered sorority and founded on the campus of Howard University, January 15th, 1908. The sorority was founded at Howard University in Washington, D.C. by a group of 16 students. Events, we ask that you please visit our website at aka-lko.org and click on other programs where you can see a calendar of our community events. You may also email us at info@aka-lko.org. In closing, we would like to extend a special thank you to the joint partnership between Fairfax County and Loudoun County Libraries for allowing us to share these exceptional figures. We hope this engagement has inspired your interest and even more your desire to learn about the many artists and contributors of the Harlem Renaissance and Black Arts Movement. We encourage you to visit your local library for resources and catalogs that are appropriate for all ages. We thank you for viewing, bid you farewell, and warmest regards from Alpha Kappa Alpha, Lambda Kappa Omega Chapter, and the Educational and Charitable Foundation.